Hi, this is Ruth Theresa with One Inspiring Woman, and today we're talking about something that happened 158 years ago. That's right, it's the 158th anniversary of the Battles of Gettysburg ending. So, July 3rd, 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg ended. And so I get a lot of questions about battle sites like Gettysburg. Is there a lot of residual energy in the area? There is. And I will tell you that you really don't have to be that psychic to pick up on it. There are hundreds or thousands of accounts of people that will see people out on the battlefield and they'll think it's like a reenactment, or people that are training for a reenactment, and then they'll get back to somewhere else and be like, oh wow, it was really great to see these guys in actions, and they're like, nothing was in play today, no one was playing today, no one was reenacting anything. And they'll be like, but I saw people out on the field. So it doesn't have to be necessarily psychic to catch to be affected by that energy or to see things. Many years ago, my husband and my kids went to Gettysburg when we were up in the area, and we really enjoyed touring the battlefields, and so doing some ghost tours up there. The energy is still there. It's very prevalent in the area, and you can feel it. Several of them I thought was really interesting, though. Several of the ghosts that I got to talk to when I was there were really interested of like, they had no idea of like how long. On the other side, there's not any clocks. So it's kind of like, did I pass away today? Did I pass away yesterday? Kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, I passed away like 150 years ago kind of thing. And they're just like in shock, and they almost like come falling out into the roads. A lot of the old country roads that were around when they were there are still there, but now they're all paved and nice roads. But they kind of come stumbling out of the fields. And I thought that was a really interesting aspect when we were there with my family, that these kids would kind of come stumbling out and kind of like have no clue. It's like, how long have I been wandering around in this cornfield or this wheat field or whatever it is? It's like they kind of just stumble out, and they're kind of like, I have no idea what time frame or where I am, or that even if they pass. So it's one of those, a lot of them didn't even realize they had passed, and I think that's kind of the sad part. But I would say too that one of the interesting ones that I was able to talk to was a gentleman named Frank, and he was very interested in kind of like taking off or leaving, or kind of like, I feel like I've been here and I'm ready to go and see my family, and kind of waiting to kind of go up to heaven. And so that was something that I dealt with a lot when I was there with my family, is as we were driving around, and a lot of the country roads are like two lanes, just kind of like a little old country road. Then you'll open up into a parking area, and my kids and my husband wanted to go and do something, and I was like, I'm going to sit in the car for a little bit. And I had several of them come up to me and ask if they could be sent up to heaven. And so that was a really fun thing for me to do, and to connect with their energy for a period of time. I think that was really interesting. I always think it's interesting to connect with a ghost from the other side, and how young they look. It's one of those, some of these, I'm going to call them boys for better, it's like young men. I mean, we're talking like 18, 19, 20 years old. And most of them didn't really have a whole uniform. Sometimes they only had a jacket, or they only had the pants, and they had their old shirt from home or whatever it is. Very ragtag kind of thing. A lot of them had like holes in their shoes. Some of them had like no socks at all. It's one of those, it was kind of more piecemeal together. And that was the thing that was like really overwhelming when we were there, is like, you think of our armies and soldiers today, we think of them of having like well-equipped shoes and the right uniform for the weather that they're in, and the right, guns and bullets and all that kind of stuff. And it really wasn't that way back then. It was very ragtag, kind of just like throw everything together and come forward. So I think that was the part that really hit me interestingly when we were there, is to kind of have that energy of these kids just kind of falling out of these fields, and kind of like, what's going on and where am I at. I think it was really interesting. And then to see all the monuments, I think that was the other part that was really interesting. There's a lot of monuments to all the different groups that were there. This cavalry group and this band and this, all that kind of stuff. They're all over the place. And it's really interesting, as you get closer to Gettysburg, you can feel the energy kind of amping up. there were so many people killed in a very short period of time, that it still affects people today. Several people that I was near or around would feel dizzy or sick, and a lot of times it was the ghosts that were around them, and not realizing, oh, I'm being too close to someone else. And I thought that was really interesting, as well as kind of like their energy of like just being around them, like they just want to make that connection to the other side and tell someone their story. I had several ghosts during that time frame step up and tell me their stories. One of the young men, not Frank, his name was Little Billy, named after his dad, and he came from Alabama, northern Alabama, and I wasn't quite sure the town. I don't even remember the town's name now, but it was really, really small. And he was up there. He had gotten attached to one group, going one direction, and then that group would kind of get shot up, and he would get directed to somewhere else. So he was never really in the same regiment or the same group for all that long, and he kind of getting passed around. He says he was 21, but I really doubt he was 21. He looked really, really young. He probably looked 17 or 18 years old, if that. It's one of those. But Little Billy died at the Battle of Gettysburg, kind of on, if you look at the town, kind of on the east side of town, and he was marching in. And I thought it was just really interesting. He had already been in so many battles, skirmishes along the way, that he had kind of learned about battle and kind of like how to stay low and how to get, I'm saying, like get around things. And he would send messages from one group to another. And he was really good at it. He said he was faster than a rabbit. He loved to run. And so he would kind of run the messages between the generals or the different commanding officers. And I think that's one of the reasons why he stayed around, and stayed alive, because he wasn't necessarily in the battle itself. He was kind of around the edge. His energy was really sweet. And he had a sweetheart back home, and not realizing how much time had passed, he was hoping that she was still waiting for him. And I sent him off to heaven, and he was very thankful, and he's very just sweet energy in that. I had several of them that came up and talked to me during that time frame. So the Battle of Gettysburg is still very much alive. I know they're doing reenactments every so many years or so. If you get an opportunity to go, you should go. The energy is amazing. There's many, many ghost tours that are in that area, and you will definitely see some action. It's one of those. I think the thing that really hit me the hardest was when we did a ghost tour. We went to a house, and then we went out and did some other sites around the old town, and we went into an orphanage. And when the orphanage was started, before the battles at Gettysburg, during the beginning of the war, a very young, sweet young lady ran it, and her husband had passed, and she was almost like a mother to a lot of the orphans that were there. And then she got married, and her husband moved off somewhere, and they brought in someone else to run it. And I can't remember the names. If I can find it, I'll put them in the description below. But whoever took over afterwards was not as nice, and she beat and abused the kids. She had an older son that also kind of like beat and abused the kids, and it was very torturous. It was not nice at all. And I just, feel for those kids. And we kind of walked through the building. It was very, very difficult. You could feel just the abuse in the air. You could feel the energy of it. And then we walked into the basement, kind of where they did a lot of the abuse, and kind of more hitting, beating, that sort of thing. And it was like you could just feel it. It was just like the uneasiness of everything. We did get a couple of good pictures of a couple of ghosts, but it was one of those you almost felt like you really didn't want to, because it's like, why would you want a picture of someone getting hurt or beat or tied up or tied to the wall because they did something wrong? It was very, very abusive during that time frame, and I think that's the part that just like broke my heart. It was very heavy energy, and I just think their energy came from a bad place. And they also, the mother that took over, it's one of those, her and her son just had really, really bad energy. And you could just still feel their energy in that space. Even after like 150 something years, you could still feel that energy in that space. I think that's the worst part of kind of the battle. So many families were ripped up or torn apart because dad went off to war, something happened to mom, or some family member happened, and it's like, so families got kind of like torn apart and taken apart. And several times, like the dad passed or the mom passed, and the kids have no future at that point. A lot of them were taken in by other family members or other friends, and usually at that point they were kind of almost like slave labor. We're giving you a house and a home or food, and because of that, you need to do all of these things for us. That was a really heavy energy for especially me there. It took me a long time when I got back to get that cleansed out of my system. I think that was the really hard part. I thank you so much for joining me. And if you have a question that you'd like for me to answer for you or get a psychic answer, please make sure that you post and like, and I will make sure to get in touch with you. I hope you have an amazing night. Talk to you soon.